This is the Louis T. Network.
You know who I am, and you know what this is. Don't watch me. Watch TV. But since I'm on TV, hey, watch me. What's going on? I'm your man, Louis T, and this is PFC Weekly. Thank you for joining me. Week 2 is in the books in the National Football League, and there is a lot to get to. But before I get to any of what happened in the National Football League this week, time for a shameless plug. Visit the site, profootballcentral.com. There are plenty of print articles, numerous podcasts for your liking, something for everyone on this site. On my show, just about every week, I have someone from the site, from one of these podcasts, coming onto the show, talking very passionately about these teams. And this is what you get when you visit the site, profootballcentral.com. It's something for everyone on this site, and it is a site for the hardcore football fan, not just NFL, college as well. Whatever you're looking for, you can find it, NFL or football related, on the site, profootballcentral.com. So now let's get to the proceedings this evening. And week 2, man, was it a wild and crazy week. And there are a lot of teams right now scratching their heads, asking questions, wanting to know what is going on, and looking and searching for answers as to how to get it done in this 2013 season. Before we get to the teams that are lost right now, that seem like they can't get their footing in 2013, let's talk about some of these surprise teams, some of these teams that have, and it's only been 2 weeks now. We don't want to go too far, but there are some teams that have exceeded my expectations. I can't speak for anyone else, but my expectations have been exceeded already to this point. And so let's talk about a couple of teams. First, you got to start with the Miami Dolphins. I think a lot of people are being very neglectful if they're not talking about this Miami Dolphins football team right now. What they were able to accomplish in the first 2 weeks of the season is magnificent. Okay, 2 straight road games. Now, look, they did not play murderer's row in these first 2 weeks, but it does not matter. Anytime you're able to go on the road in the National Football League and get a victory, that's a huge accomplishment. In week 1, they go to Cleveland. The Browns played extremely well in the preseason. Now, granted, they don't have all of their stuff through the Cleveland Browns, but it does not matter. That's not the Dolphins' problem. They went into Cleveland, took care of business, played a very clean football game, forced some turnovers, and were able to get out of there with a 23-10 victory. They go on to Indianapolis the very next week on the road once again, and these Dolphins look like road warriors right now as they go into Indianapolis, a place that they lost last season, and they take care of business 24-20. Again, very clean football game. They don't turn it over. They force some turnovers of their own, and they come out of Indianapolis victors 24-20. They're 2-0. They haven't set foot in their own home stadium yet. That will take place in week 3. And Ryan Tannehill has looked exceptional to start this season out. They're finally getting some contributions from this running game. Lamar Miller started this season off very, very slow, but he picked it up in week 2, helped them score some points, helped them get some big yardage out of the running game, especially when they were looking for some runs to help wind this clock down. He came up big. He also scored a touchdown in this game. So he's starting to pick up some of the slack in the running game. And so that's definitely a welcoming sight if you are a Miami Dolphins fan. And you look at this team, this defense is starting to come together. They're starting to gel. They're getting pressure. Cameron Wake is a man beast, and he's been producing for them. You look at the rest of this defensive line and all of the things that they bring to the table. These linebackers, they went out, they spent money on Phillip Wheeler. They spent money on Donnell Ellerbe. These guys are starting to play good football. Koa Misi got a new contract. He's playing well. Also, you look at this secondary, and this is probably what has held this Dolphins team up to this point, is the back end and how well this back end has played early on in this season. You look at Brent Grimes. You look at Demetri Patterson, a guy that was on the street just 3 or 4 weeks ago. They snatch him up, and all of a sudden he comes in and he plays well in week 1. Brent Grimes has infused this team with an attitude, a swagger that they lacked last season, especially in this secondary. Look out for this Miami Dolphins football team. They've looked the best out of all the teams in the AFC East right now. And again, it's early. It's week 2. A lot of things have yet to be settled. They haven't played a team within the AFC East yet. They haven't seen the New England Patriots, the big, bad New England Patriots yet. And so a lot of things have been left to be settled. But I tell you this much, the Miami Dolphins are a pleasant surprise in this early portion of the NFL season. You look at another surprise, and they're not undefeated, but they're playing some good football, and that's the Buffalo Bills. And look, I'll be the first to line up and say that I was wrong about E.J. Manuel, and he's come in and he's had a steady presence about himself, and he's come in and had a quiet demeanor, a very confident and quiet demeanor. And he's led this Buffalo Bills football team. And look, they could easily be 2-0 right now. They found a way to get it done on Sunday at home versus the Carolina Panthers. And it's going to be very interesting to see how E.J. Manuel and this Buffalo Bills football team travels, as they haven't been on the road yet. Both of their first 2 games out of the gate were at home, one against the New England Patriots, one that they let slip away, and another one versus the Carolina Panthers in week 2, one that they were able to get. Just as they lost in heartbreaking fashion to the Patriots, they won in equally exhilarating fashion in week 2 versus the Carolina Panthers. And so this Buffalo Bills team is playing some good football. They look confident. And the thing that has surprised me the most, and yes, I will say I've been surprised about how E.J. Manuel has shown himself as an NFL quarterback, and one that looks to be very potent at this point. But this defense, for me, seems to really have risen to the forefront, and I can't say that I saw this one coming. I love their defensive coordinator. Mike Patton, to me, is a young head coaching star in the making. I think that he will be a head coach, if not this next season upcoming, in the season that follows. I think he's a guy that's going to be on a lot of teams' radar, and he's a guy that gets it as a defensive coordinator. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's a head coach here shortly. He has this defense believing. He has this defense playing some really aggressive and good and smart football. And they're running to the football. They're forcing and creating turnovers. They're being very aggressive and disruptive. They were very disruptive against Carolina on Sunday. They were equally as disruptive against Tom Brady the Sunday before that. And so this Buffalo Bills defense has really surprised me early on in this season with how well they were able to forge together, because there are a lot of different pieces on this football team. Some of these guys were around last year, but it's a new scheme. It's a new head coach. It's a new defensive coordinator. A lot of things have changed, yet this Bills defense seems to not have missed a beat. And so I've been surprised by the play of this defense. And E.J. Manuel, the Bills looked up to the football gods and said, football gods, how do we win? And it looks like the football gods sent down the winning manual. We'll see. But it appears that the Bills may have found the winning recipe in EJ Manuel. Now, let's talk about some other teams and the teams that have been not so fortunate to start this season out. Let's talk about some of these 0-2 football teams and who is desperate right now. Who is this close to pressing that panic button? It's early. There's no need to panic quite yet. It's only been 2 weeks of football. And so no need to panic quite yet and jump off of the bandwagon if you are a fan of a specific team. No front runners here. I don't deal well with front runners. You're either a fan and a loyal one for life, or you're not a fan at all. And so no need to panic and go crazy right now if your team is 0-2. But there are some teams with more questions that need to be answered than others. And for me, if you want me to analyze the 0-2 teams and give you one that seems to be in the most desperate state, it's going to be very hard for me to do that because there are several teams that are struggling right now that need help. And if I had to put my finger on one or two or three of them, I would say there's a three-way tie between three teams that have 0-2 records right now that are asking themselves, what is going on right now? We can't get a handle on how to rectify this situation. The first one that comes to mind has to be the Washington Redskins. And Robert Griffin III and his inaccurate play thus far, and this offense really not being able to get into a rhythm until after the game is well out of hand and teams have dialed it back defensively. You look at their defense, and it's been one of the worst units in all of the National Football League. They've given up over 1,000 yards total in offense. They've given up over 70 points within the first 2 weeks of the season. This Redskins team looks lost on the football field. They can't tackle. They haven't been able to do much right in the first 2 weeks of the season. And if you're looking for a team last year that made it to the postseason that looks like they're in the most danger of not being able to get back to the postseason, look no further than the Washington Redskins right now at this juncture. Don't be afraid to throw the Minnesota Vikings in there as well. But to me, the Vikings have been way more competitive than the Washington Redskins. They are number one on the list of 0-2 teams that are panicking right now. You look at another team that's panicking right now that is 0-2, and that's the New York Football Giants. Granted, they've played some good football teams to start this season out. It does not matter. The Dallas Cowboys in Dallas isn't an unattainable goal. They've beaten the Cowboys before in that stadium. As a matter of fact, going into that season opener, the Giants had not lost in Jerry's World at AT&T Stadium. And so that was their first loss to the Cowboys in that very stadium. And so they had opportunities to win that game. They turned it over 6 times. And probably that's the most alarming thing about this Giants season so far in 2013 is the amount of turnovers. Eli Manning had 4 interceptions in week 1. Eli Manning had 4 interceptions in week 2. The Giants can't win if they continuously turn the football over. And right now, that's something that they've been doing with very reckless abandon. They've been turning the football over. David Wilson couldn't keep a handle of the ball in week 1. They went out and signed Brandon Jacobs in week 2. He played sparingly in week 2, but David Wilson still got the bulk of the carries. But he looked tentative. He looked like a guy that was more concerned with holding on to the football than making plays. And so this Giants team right now is definitely lost. And so they're another team that needs to look out as they're trying to find their way in 2013, getting off to an 0-2 start. Another team that is lost right now. And I don't really know what the expectations were for the Pittsburgh Steelers going into 2013, but I don't think many fans anticipated this team getting off to an 0-2 start, especially with the Tennessee Titans up first on the schedule at home. Many, including myself, had that down as a win for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they go out, they lay an egg, they score 9 points, they give up 16, and they lose in their home opener. They go on the road to Cincinnati on Monday Night Football, and they don't get it done there. And so you look at this Pittsburgh Steelers football team and you ask yourself, is this team finally at the point now where they're not going to restock or reload, but maybe they have to rebuild? Look, that's almost blasphemy in Pittsburgh. You don't hear the term rebuild in Pittsburgh. They don't do that. They don't rebuild. Just like the New England Patriots don't rebuild. Just like the Baltimore Ravens don't rebuild. Just like the Green Bay Packers don't rebuild. Teams around the league that are synonymous with winning don't rebuild. But the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, look, it's early. Once again, I'll say it again. It's early, but the Steelers look like a team in turmoil. A lot of injuries, a lot of younger players having to assume roles that I don't think the Steelers are comfortable with some of these guys having to assume some of these roles. Larry Foote was supposed to be in the middle of this defense. He's gone. Now they have a collection of young, maybe talented linebackers, but nonetheless undrafted, late-round draft picks in the middle of their defense, having to call the plays. I don't know how comfortable the Steelers and Dick LeBeau are with these guys in the middle of the mix on this defense at the linebacker position. You look at this offense for the Steelers, and they seem to lack explosiveness. They seem to lack consistency. And you can't lack both consistency and explosiveness. You need at least one of those components. And the Steelers seem to lack both. And yeah, Mike Wallace's departure hurts, but they have guys that can stretch the field. They just haven't been able to do so. They drafted Marcus Wheaton out of Oklahoma State to be a guy that can stretch the field. Haven't really seen a lot of this guy yet. They still have Emmanuel Sanders. He can run. He can stretch the field. Hasn't been able to do so yet. They still have Antonio Brown. He's a guy that can run, can stretch the field. He hasn't been able to do so yet. And then you look for some guys that can provide consistency. None of these guys have been that consistent to this point. Even a guy that's steady like Jericho Cotchery has dropped the football and not been a consistent force for the Pittsburgh Steelers at the wide receiver position. They lose Plaxico Burress in the offseason. And then you couple that with the fact that Ben Roethlisberger's most reliable target, that being Heath Miller, has been out to start this season, still rehabbing a torn ACL. And you ask yourself, is this Pittsburgh Steelers team in trouble? Now, Heath Miller may be back in week 3, Sunday Night Football versus the Chicago Bears. He may not. Le'Veon Bell, rookie running back, someone that they look to infuse this very lifeless running game right now. He may or may not be back in week 3. If you're a Steelers fan, you're holding your breath, hoping that both of these guys can get back on the field because this offense needs a shot in the arm. And so the Steelers are another 0-2 football team that is in dire straits right now, looking, searching, probing for answers to try to get off the schneid. And they don't have an easy one coming up on Sunday Night Football at home versus the 2-0 Chicago Bears. So that should be some interesting football there as well. So a lot of different storylines in the National Football League. You look at some of the dominant 2-0 football teams to this point, and you got to start with the Seattle Seahawks and the Denver Broncos. Both of these teams have won and won convincingly. The Seahawks, not so much so as the Denver Broncos. Seahawks eked by the Carolina Panthers in week 1, but the defense has been consistently dominant to start this season, only giving up 7 points on the road against the Carolina Panthers and then turning around and going home against the juggernaut San Francisco 49ers and only giving up 3 points. And so this Seahawks defense right now seems to be the trendsetter. They seem to be the best of the best in the National Football League right now in terms of stopping teams from scoring points. And to me, that's the stat that matters the most. You can stockpile all the yards you want, but if it's not yielding points, I don't care. And right now, the Seattle Seahawks aren't giving up points, and they're a dangerous football team when they are at home. What I'm going to be interested to see with this Seattle Seahawks team is how they travel, how they take their hard hat and lunch pail, their running game and that defense, and travel on the road, and how they're able to fare when they have to go to someone else's house and get a W. They were able to do it against the Carolina Panthers, but what happens when you play the upper echelon teams on the road? Can you get it done? That'll be something to watch for as the season progresses. But right now, the Seattle Seahawks look extremely poised and ready to make a run in the NFC conference. You look at the AFC, and the Denver Broncos are head and shoulders above the rest of that conference right now. They've scored 40 points in back-to-back games. Peyton Manning hasn't thrown an interception yet, and he's thrown 9 or 10 touchdowns to start this season. This Denver Broncos offense has it on cruise control right now, and with all the weapons that they have, it's going to be hard to stop this team moving forward. If they can stay relatively healthy on the offensive line, and it looks like they may be dealt a devastating blow as Ryan Clady could be out for the remainder of the season with a Liz Frank injury to his foot once again. And so the Denver Broncos, their fan base, their team, their organization right now holding their collective breath, because if he can't go for the rest of the season, that is definitely going to be something that could rear its ugly head down the road, because he's the one that anchors that offensive line. He's the one that protects Peyton Manning's blind side. That's why they gave him that deal in the offseason. And if he can't go, if he's going to miss a considerable amount of time, forget about the rest of the season. If this guy's going to miss a 6 to 8 block portion of this season, the Denver Broncos could be in some trouble. We'll see how they fare. But nonetheless, to start this season off, the Denver Broncos have been red hot. And mind you, they don't even have a full clip on the defensive side of the football. Von Miller suspended for the first 6 games of the season. Champ Bailey has not suited up for this team. So they're not even going into battle with the full clip, with a fully loaded gun yet. They are blowing teams out and playing some really, really good football. And so this is a scary and dangerous Denver Broncos team right now, as they and the Seattle Seahawks are 2-0 and look to be the creme de la creme in their conferences right now. So you look at some other teams around the league, and San Diego Chargers in week 2. Surprise, surprise. The Chargers go to Philadelphia, everyone's darling and sweetheart, after they were able to amass such gaudy offensive totals in week 1 versus the Washington Redskins. The Eagles go home, and I think a lot of us forgot just how bad this Eagles defense really is, just because the Redskins offense was so inept in week 1. I think we forgot about the holes and the transition that this Eagles defense has to make. Well, the San Diego Chargers reminded us loud and clear that this Eagles defense has a ways to go. And so this San Diego Chargers team that seemed to be one of the bottom feeders in that division in the AFC West, going into the season, not a lot of high expectations for this team, but Phillip Rivers looks to be the Phillip Rivers of old, because the guy that was playing last year and the year before that, I didn't know that guy. I didn't know who he was. I know this Phillip Rivers, and this Phillip Rivers is a bad, bad man, and you saw what this offense can be in San Diego when they're clicking on all cylinders, when they're able to get an offensive rhythm. Antonio Gates looks spry. He looks healthy. That foot looks to be back to 100%. You're getting contributions from Eddie Royal. This guy already has set a career high in touchdown passes, and we're only going into week 3. He's already got 5, which is a career high. He's playing really good football. If he can stay healthy, he adds a dimension to this football team. They've shed themselves of Robert Meacham, and they've gotten rid of him. And you look at Brown, who is back on his football team. You sprinkle in the rookie out of Cal, and all of a sudden, Phillip Rivers has targets to throw the football to. This is a dangerous offense. If this defense can come around, and you know what? I've been very surprised with this San Diego Chargers defense. They're getting pressure on the quarterback, and I said that Dwight Freeney was not going to fit in this San Diego Chargers 3-4 defense. He wasn't a good fit in Indianapolis in the 3-4 defense, and I didn't know what was going to change. Why was he going to be any better in the San Diego Chargers version of the 3-4 defense? I just thought it wasn't a good fit, and I disapproved of that move to acquire him after Melvin Ingram went down. But lo and behold, Dwight Freeney has been invigorated, and he looks good, and he's getting pressure on the quarterback. And I've been surprised at how this San Diego Chargers team has responded after that tough loss in the opening week of the season to Houston, after having a 28-7 lead evaporate in the fourth quarter. I was surprised to see them come out and play the way they did against Philadelphia. And the one thing I can say about San Diego early on in this season is that this offense, Mike McCoy, and this offensive scheme that he and Ken Wisenhunt have put together is working wonders in San Diego. They're scoring points. If this defense can find ways to hold teams down, San Diego might do a little bit more damage than we once thought going into this season. And so I've said a lot to this point, but there's so much season left to be played. And yeah, teams are struggling right now, but you don't know how this season ultimately is going to unfold. So I caution you with this. If your team has started 2-0 or 1-1 and they've looked impressive doing so, hold on a second. Don't overreact. Don't get too excited. All right? If your team has started 0-2 or they've started 1-1, but they haven't looked impressive, they've looked a little shaky, relax. It's not the end of the world. Remember this. Nothing's as good as it seems. Nothing's as bad as it seems. Somewhere in between, reality falls. This season is a long one. It is not a sprint. It is a marathon in the National Football League. And so, I've said a lot once again, but you've still got room for a mental snack. And the mental snack for today is tackling in the National Football League. Tackling in the National Football League is a lost art. Sometimes I question whether they teach it anymore at the professional level. It's almost like tackling is a prerequisite to getting to the National Football League. You already need to know how to do it, so we're not going to teach you how to do it. And I know that's not the case. I know teams go over tackling and the right techniques and how to get guys down, but at the same time, tackling around the National Football League is very porous. Some teams do it extremely well. I watched the Kansas City Chiefs play the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday, and I was thoroughly impressed with their ability to get guys on the ground in open space. There's not many times the Kansas City Chiefs miss tackles. They get guys out in space, one-on-one. They find a way to get that player down onto the turf. Vice versa, you look at the Washington Redskins, these guys can't tackle to save their life. And Brandon Merriweather is a headhunter. And he went after Eddie Lacy, hit him in his head, gave him a concussion. Then he ducked his head again, trying to hit running back James Starks on the sidelines and knocked himself out. If you use the right form, if you do the right things, these type of things can be avoided. You look at the league and the way they've structured it and the way they've set it up. You can't hit guys high. They're talking about looking at hitting guys low. Where do you want these players to tackle guys at? It's hard for a defender to go out and make sound tackles and hits on players when it's hard, because anytime it looks bad, usually they throw the flag. And William Moore had a beautiful hit, and that's textbook. That's the way you want people to lay the lumber in this league. And Deshaun Golson has been suspended for a game for repeated violations of hitting players in their helmets with his helmet to helmet hits. He had one in week 1 versus the Jets. He had 2, as a matter of fact. And then he turned around and added to that with another one on Sunday in week 2 versus the New Orleans Saints with a helmet to helmet shot on Darren Sproles. The league has seen enough. He's been suspended for a game. And so it's been a dicey situation with this tackling thing, because we saw what happened to tight end Dustin Keller in the preseason with DJ Swearinger, rookie safety for the Houston Texans, going low and ending Dustin Keller's season. Yet you don't want to see guys go high, because you'll have concussions like the one Eddie Lacy sustained, like the one Brandon Merriweather sustained in that Packers-Redskins game. And so hard to tell these guys where to hit players. But at the end of the day, be fundamentally sound in tackling. Get the players down on the ground. That's the name of the game. If you can't tackle, you can't win in the National Football League. And so that's going to do it for this edition of Pro Football Central Weekly. I'm your host, once again, Louis T. Signing off for myself and the rest of the ProFootballCentral.com staff. We are Pro Football Central. Have a good one. See you on Thursday.